Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to another episode of the 33 Fuel podcast. My name is Warren Pole. I'm one of the co-founders here at 33 Fuel, and today I am excited to bring onto the show Damian Hall. Damian and I first met several years ago, actually. Goes back a little while now. We were both journalists back in the day, writing about extreme sports, human performance, that sort of thing. And whereas I took that and literally ran with it to begin building 33 Fuel, along with my co-founders, Damian quite literally ran with it and has become a spectacularly good ultramarathon runner. He has knocked out a top 5 position at the Ultra Trail de Mont Blanc, which for those of you who are into your ultramarathons, you will now be nodding sagely and going, whew, that is some running. For those of you who haven't come across this race, it is probably the grand dame of ultramarathons, and it's held annually in Chamonix in France, and basically it covers 103 miles with give or take 10,000 meters of vertical ascent and descent. It covers 3 countries. You start in France, run across the Alps into Italy, keep running around the Alps into Switzerland, and keep running around them some more until you come back into France where you first started. Despite stringent qualification criteria, you cannot just rock up and do this race. Only 50% of entrants in any given year will finish, let alone, you can see, finishing is a big deal, but finishing fast, that's something only a tiny fraction of individuals will ever do. And Damian is the only person to have got into that top 10 that year who was not a full-time professional runner. He has a job, he has a family, and he fits his running around that, quite spectacularly so. So Damian brings a huge amount of value in terms of how do we keep pushing our personal limits. Like me, he's comfortably into his 40s now, and he is not showing any signs of slowing down, but the body is handling it. You know, you can't get away with pushing yourself in your 40s the way you do in your 20s without things breaking. You need to be much more aware of the holistic nature of your training, the toll it's taking on your body, and how you balance that to get the results. Damian's an expert student of that, and he brings so much value in this conversation around that area. As well as that, he's used his most recent race, or run, which we'll be talking about, because obviously with COVID, a bit short on races this year. Like many others, Damian took to the FKT, Fastest Known Time Challenge, but he set himself a lumpy one. He chose the Pennine Way, 268 miles long with 11,000 meters of elevation. He broke a many years old record, decimated it frankly, and ran this Pennine Way in 61 hours, apologies. So minimal sleep, pushing through, another huge achievement, particularly when really you're chasing a phantom. The finish line and the enemy is you. There is no one else in competition. You've got to pull this all out of your own mind, your own motivation. But Damian used this not just as a platform for athletic fun and adventure, as well as performance. He used it as a platform to highlight his thoughts and message around climate change and what we need to be doing for our planet. Along with his crew, they cleared litter from that Pennine Way trail while running at such an incredible pace. That I think is just beautiful. And Damian will describe himself as a carbon negative ultra runner, looking at his whole life, working out any travel that he has to do, and making sure that he is carbon negative in his and his family's footprint. It's a beautiful message, and one that we all need to take care of, because for so many of us, if you're listening to this podcast, the outdoors is our playground, and we want it here for a very long time for us, for our children, our children's children, and beyond. So look, there is tons coming up here. You're really in for a treat. And as always, this conversation fits completely with our mission at 33 Fuel, which is simply giving you the best possible tools for optimum human performance. We do it by sharing brilliant content like this for free across multiple platforms, whether it's our podcast, our vlog, the blog at 33fuel.com. We've got oodles of info for you there, all of it free, it always will be. We also do this in store, where we make the best possible natural sports nutrition for your health, well-being and performance. So look, do go and check out the products in store at 33fuel.com, but not before you have enjoyed this conversation with Mr. Damian Hall. With great pleasure. Damian Hall, direct from a bedroom, by the looks of it, surrounded by butterflies, glowing, literally, I think, with health, vitality, and the sort of ever so gently peaceful, very British smugness of someone who's really done something quite exceptional recently in the shape of the Pennine Way FKT, 268 miles. Let me get it right. I've got 11,200 metres of elevation. I may be a couple out there. That's a serious run. No wonder you're at least reposed upon a bed as we're doing this, because this was very recent. How are you? Thank you for coming to join us today.
That was quite the introduction. Thank you. I don't know where to start with all that, but yeah, I think if there was a healthy glow, it's purely the shine from my massive forehead. And I'm on bed. It's not because I'm effectively bedbound, honest. It's because I have a good workspace around the corner, but the kids are being noisy, and so I jumped in the bedroom for a little bit of quiet. But yeah, thank you. Yeah, yes, I do have a small amount of classic British. I don't want to say, I suppose, smugness, or at least satisfaction.
Pride.
Something like that. I don't want to get too carried away, because I very cruelly broke John Kelly's record that had only stood for 8 days after a 31-year gap of no one breaking the record. So there's every chance there might be someone else scheming, and there are some runners capable of bettering my time. So you never know. I guess partly I should enjoy this while I can, but at any moment it might be, especially in this crazy summer we're having with all these FKTs. I might just go on Twitter and realize someone has run it even faster. So I guess, yeah, I need to milk it while I can. So thank you for letting me.
Oh no, absolutely a pleasure. Always here to help for milking of these things, or should you not like milk and prefer a plant-based alternative, we can work with that as well. So much to go into here. You're right, crazy summer of FKTs, which I'm sure everybody knows by now, but just in case they don't, fastest known time. There aren't events, there aren't races. This sort of is a logical expression of all that pent-up training angst, which now needs to be freed and let go somewhere. But what was it that led you to pick this one? And how does it fit within the sort of broader pattern of why you think more athletes are looking at these fastest known times? And beyond that, how do you go about working one out? Because there's quite the element of... I know we can record everything, but I don't know how you record one. So there's quite a lot to go into there. But let's have Pennine Way, fastest known time. Why did you pick it, and how long did it take you from picking it to executing?
I could go back a full 9 years actually when I first hiked the Pennine Way, and actually I wasn't a runner there. I'd just done my first half marathon. I don't know if that counts me as a runner or not, but I didn't feel like I was a runner. I was a hiker or a trekker. And I trekked it, and I was actually doing a guidebook for it. So I was very lucky to get that commission. But I loved the Pennine Way and all its history, and kind of the fact it's right in the middle of England as well. It's quite neat. You've got these big cities either side, sort of Leeds, Manchester, and so on, Sheffield, but you can really feel quite remote on it, remote for sort of England or Britain anyway. And it's got this wonderful history, not least connecting to the Mass Trespass of 1932.
Hang on a minute. The Mass Trespass of 1932. You've thrown that in there. Obviously, everyone else knows about this, but I don't. Can you give me a quick footnote?
Well, it's a really important bit of civil disobedience, which again feels salient nowadays. Maybe we can go into that later. But at the time, the land regulations, the land laws, nearly all the upland areas were owned by a rich elite. Who used it for grouse hunting, but basically us common folk weren't allowed on a lot of these areas. And this was increasingly frustrating, essentially walkers who just wanted to get out from the cities at the weekend and go up in the hills, which is pretty reasonable. And we could go even further back to the mass land enclosures of, I think it was the century before, when, rich gentried folk basically stole lots of common land. But yeah, I'm getting on my high horse a bit. But there's a lot of history of that in Britain of people already have stuff, taking more stuff from people who don't have stuff. But anyway, so a group, several hundred people, mostly young people, mostly young men, did an intentional mass trespass on Kinder Scout in the Peak District, and a lot of them were arrested and put in prison. But this became a pivotal moment in a sort of campaign, and over time, this has opened up a lot more of the upland areas in England and Wales for us to frolic gaily in. And that also, one of the guys there who was arrested, Tom Stevenson, it was him who fought for another 30 years for the Pennine Way to come into existence. So there's a really important bit of history, I think, that hopefully most at least most walkers or most outdoorsy folk are kind of aware of. And so Kinder Scout, and I ran the Pennine Way this time, sort of going south. So Kinder Scout was one of the very last bits I got to. Felt like a real sort of pilgrimage, and hopefully a bit of a tribute to them as well. So it was an important moment. It's still, the upland areas. We don't have the same regulations here as in Scotland, where I'm pretty sure you can pretty much roam free, almost willy-nilly, to use another great phrase. But in England, there are still a lot of regulations, but it's much better than it was. So we owe those brave folk something. So I loved that element of the history of that and the Pennine Way, and it's our oldest national trail. And national trail kind of means it's government backed, so it gets, it's got good way marking, good path maintenance, good signposting. It's on the maps. So I hiked it and loved it. And then as I got more into running, the spine race started. And I signed up for the third year, the third event, and straight away for the fourth event as well, because it was so painful that I had to do it again. And so I had this bit of history with the Pennine Way. But it was only about 4 years ago that I started thinking about whether this FKT was possible for me, because it was such a good record, such a good run. It stood for so long. But I had put it in my guidebook. I remember writing it in and thinking, wow, that's kind of obscene. That's incredible. It was 2 days and 17 hours to cover. Strictly speaking, it's 260 miles when you run it, because you don't necessarily take every kind of, there's a few alternative routes or little detours. And both me and John Kelly have been careful to sort of copy Mike Hartley's record route exactly, so that it's sort of consistent. Yes, so I had this history with it, quite a strong history, and then lockdown. So every year I'd kind of put it off because I was quite intimidated by it, and there was always a race or two, namely UTMB. This year, no UTMB, no races, and I was like, oh bugger, I haven't got any excuses left, so I might as well give it a go.
That's a nice silver lining to, there were some moderately bad things going on in the world, not least of all UTMB being cancelled and or postponed. What's one to do with all that hard work? Some people could have said, well, I'll just take it easy until next year. You're clearly not one of those people. I don't think many people who run ultras or take their trail running seriously are. However, to go, well, I'm not doing that 103 or 4 mile race in the mountains. Instead, I'll do that 268 mile one that, by the way, also doesn't come with a set start date or anyone knowing that I'm doing it. So how did you go about putting it in the calendar and making it happen? Because it's very easy to go later, I'm not quite ready, I can postpone a week. How did you pull the trigger?
Yeah, it is a bit tricky, and lockdown made it even trickier, and not least because it has 6 kilometres in Scotland as well, and Scotland had different lockdown time scale, so it was actually okay to start in England, but not the Scottish bit. So actually, my dates did change at least twice, got pushed back. I guess I still, and also April and May, if people remember, was just absolutely gorgeous. Sunshine all the time, lovely dry trails, the driest trails I can remember near me. And that would have been perfect because the Pennine Way is pretty boggy. That's its reputation. And, probably only once a year, if that, does it kind of properly dry out. And when Mike Hartley set the record in 1989, he apparently had an almost unprecedented dry spell, super dry. So I was really praying for something like that. But there was a feeling of like, after April and May, like maybe we've had our summer effectively, which does seem to be pretty much the case as I look out the window into the drizzle outside. So that was a bit, the weather with something like this is always going to be really important and quite stressful. So I did change dates twice, mostly for lockdown. And then when the weather, only really a week out, can you start to see some weather detail. And even then it's quite mixed. And I did send 1 or 2 panicky emails to sort of key crew key people in my team saying, I don't know whether to postpone a week or bring it forward, or and actually they were really good and they were calm and they said, look, it's still a week out. Actually, the weather can change a lot, so don't panic for now. And by then, 2 or 3 days out, I still had this idea of if I could bring it forward one day, I would miss a rainy spell. But actually, the idea of the stress of pulling it forward and upsetting my whole schedule. Everyone I'd asked, I have to re-communicate with everyone. All right, it's quicker nowadays than back in the day, but that was more stressful than running in the rain for a while. So I had I'd mixed weather. It wasn't too bad at all, but probably some classic Pennine weather. But really, it was more about the terrain underfoot. You don't want it to be too boggy because it just slows you down and saps your muscles. But yeah, it was still a bit boggy. So after a while, you've just got to sort of commit to a date, really. And if you're arranging a team, now I've done FKTs in the past where it's been either just me or just a very small group, and that's a lot easier because you can go. Actually, I'm going to go at 6 o'clock rather than 12 o'clock, and that's actually kind of less stressful. And you can pick that optimum window. But here, I did feel like I've got all these people to help me. I'm kind of locked in. So yeah, you've got to go for it, really.
So the team was as much a part of the decision as the weather, as everything else, but the trigger was pulled. Before that, there's a lot of preparation going in, but you've alluded here to the team, and clearly you need support to do something like this. But I was interested to read about your team in the lead up, in the build up, which is not all of them, I believe, were specific to this challenge. But you've been working with Renee McGregor on the nutrition side of things. You've also been working with a strength coach. You've been working with a form coach. And bringing all those things together, you're almost like your own miniature one-man Team Sky marginal gains going on here. Because I like the attention there. It's easy, I think, for people to see, well, here's an elite runner. This is fifth at the UTMB. You've been fifth. You've got huge.
Did I mention that before?
You're fifth at the UTMB. There's a headliner from anyone who's just not quite aware of everything that's going on here. But your track record is serious at the highest level. So easy for people to think, well, he knows what he's doing. And I know you have been self-coached at times, but it sounds like this team, you're not ignoring any of the details or any of the areas where you can improve, or accepting the fact that, well, I'm as good as I'm going to get. Because I also see that we are a similar age. I'm a couple of years ahead, but not much. And I feel that it's easy to think as you get into your 40s and keep going that, well, maybe there's not much left in the tank. And I love the fact that you're proving that very, very wrong. So to get back to the point, was the team and the focus there? What way did you decide to focus on that, and what did you get from those different areas?
Well, in a way, I had two different teams, I suppose. I had the team of people who were helping me on the ground. I had pacers, almost always two pacers for each kind of section, and then I had a road crew, which was initially meant to just be two people, but ended up being 3 or 4, and then 1 or 2 other people helping out as well, very kindly. So I ended up with a large team around me when it was actually happening. I meant to keep it smaller, but also some people just wanted to be part of it, which was really touching. But then, yes, I had a different team around me to sort of prepare, and some of those people I've been working with for a long time, like you guys. But also, yeah, as you mentioned, Renee McGregor, who we both know well. She's a friend. She lives near me. I'm lucky that she's one of the highest sort of most established sports dietitians in the country, if not the world. So I'm very lucky to get her advice. And yes, I've worked with Shane Benzie on my running form for a long time as well. 7 or 8 years because I don't think I'm very coachable in that respect. He's always finding something very basic that I'm doing wrong. But he's very good at explaining that in a careful, cheery way. But yeah, we're getting there, hopefully. Last year, I started working with a strength coach a bit, strength for endurance in Bath. I do feel like that's helping. And there is some science that says, I'm 44, that says as we get a bit older, we do need a bit more strength work because our muscles don't kind of well, they're basically not as youthful as they were. But also research is showing a bit of strength work can help with running economy and things like that. And also, I was just getting a bit skinny, so it was good to, just feel a bit stronger. And actually during lockdown, I ended up doing kind of more than I anticipated, like a lot of people, these remote classes. And I bought a pull-up bar, which is actually quite addictive, actually. I started off, I could only do 2 pull-ups. And I think I'm probably back to that now because I'm all weak again. But I think I got up to 7. I could do 7 in a row, which to me felt like. But that became, you just stick it up on the door, and when you go in and out of the kitchen, you just have a quick go. It's quite addictive, actually. It's a strength work.
I mean, just on that pull-up bar, there could be people thinking you're running. How's a pull-up bar going to help?
Well,
everyone can maybe go, okay, squats, yeah, I get that, deadlifts, whatever, but pull-up bar?
I see it as, like a lot of people, I've had quite a desk-bound existence. I do use a standing desk now, but I've got slouchy shoulders really from all this desk living. And when you run, if you've got bad posture during the day, when you go running, Shane Benzie believes anyway that you're not going to suddenly snap into amazing form if your body isn't used to being in that sort of upright structure. So a lot of us have, or I have, a weak upper back, especially. My shoulders are, they're not quite in the right place really. So hopefully that extra strength is going to make me essentially more upright when I'm running. And that's kind of what we want. We want to try and run tall. So I think it's, and also these long distance things, when you get tired, you just start sort of leaning either forward or sideways. And the more upright you can be, the more strength you've got around here, around your core, the more likely, hopefully, you are to be more upright. So I think there's 2 or 3 good reasons to do a bit of extra of that sort of stuff. I found that quite beneficial and surprisingly enjoyable doing that stuff. Then I was self-coached. I'm a coach myself. It's my main income. But I was self-coached for 2 years. One of them was my best ever year, UTMB and so on. And the next year, I don't know, it was less successful. But there could be various reasons for that. But I sort of thought, actually, I want some objective, guidance. So I've been working with David Roach, a very well-known American ultra running coach, and some of his clients have had, the best results, winning Western States and so on. So I thought he's the guy. So I've been working with him about 9 months. And it was awkward at first because you're used to doing exactly what you want, and there's someone else telling you, to do something else. But I've for the large part, I've trusted him and only occasionally done something slightly different to what he suggested. But I feel like it's worked a lot, and I'm glad to be working with him. And hopefully it makes me a better coach for my clients as well. I'm sure it does. Who else did we mention? So 2 things. So I'd say that a new running coach and a strength work, that was new for me last year. And this year I kind of thought, what areas haven't I worked on yet? And I came up with 2 more, which was psychology and hydration. So hydration, I think, is a bit overlooked sometimes. And I've had cramp. I've had races ruined with cramp. So I went down to the guys at Precision Hydration. They're based in Christchurch near Bournemouth.
I know them. They certainly were associate. Andy, who runs that, he ran some, was it VO2 events? They've done that. I don't know if they're still there, but certainly I can't mess him through that and through, I think he was working with the Porsche Human Performance Laboratory, which might have been at Silverstone. I forget, but yes, and quite the guy and quite the peeps on hydration now, yes?
Yes, I didn't realise how well established they were really, but they work with lots of American football teams, Premier League football teams, Formula One. They are the experts as far as I can tell in sports, hydration. But what's really fascinating is your salt sweat rate. It can be really varied. There's a huge range for different people. Some people sweat very little, but then also how much salt is in your sweat, not just the liquid. And some people are right at the other end of the spectrum. So it was really interesting for me to have a bespoke test and know where I was, and then I can get good recommendations on essentially how much electrolytes, how much liquid should I be putting in. So that just, if nothing else, gave me more confidence in what I was doing. And then I also worked with a sports psychologist, which I found fascinating, and that was Dr. Josie Perry, and she's got a great book. I'm pretty sure it's called. I'm not going to remember now. But if you Google her book will come up. Dr. Josephine Perry,
We will find it and put it in the show notes.
Something like Performance Under Pressure. That's a really good practical book, really accessible as well. Not too much psychobabble. But I worked, I had some one-on-one consultations with her, which were really useful, and essentially boiled down to kind of, think hard about why you're doing it, what's going to motivate you when things are tough. But don't just think about it, write it down, and then give yourself some visual reminders of, because I'm going to be running for, 3 days and 2 nights pretty much without sleep. The mental side's going to become huge. Why am I doing it? What's going to motivate me? So that was really useful, as well as some other things we did. So yeah, I prepared very thoroughly. I was very serious about it, and part of that I think some of that is my age, in that I think I haven't got all that long to kind of be breaking records or getting good race results. So I kind of think I'm not going to mess around on internet forums, asking strangers their advice. I'm going to go to experts and get their advice rather than messing about, I suppose. Yeah,
I think that's a great point and a great combination. That one, there's this outlet for fitness training, racing. The FKT then becomes a goal, but you threw yourself into it wholeheartedly, possibly even more so than a race, and then also with the focus of, if you do have that idea that, I don't have another 20 years to keep getting better at this in terms of being right at the front of the field. I love that urgency pushing you to go, well, I'm not going to hang about. I'm going to get the best of everything that I can to become the best that I can. I mean, do you think those combinations of circumstances have grown you as a person, an athlete, more than perhaps a regular racing season may have done?
Yeah, they could have. I guess I did. I guess I think I've had this mindset from the beginning. I did get a coach quite early on. It was almost a chance meeting at a sort of race launch, but I straight away saw the benefit of that. So most of the time I've had quite a few coaches, not because I've fallen out with them. They've often just been short-term agreements, and obviously the longer-term agreements the longer-term relationships do work out better. But it's been fascinating to get different coaching ideas, and do my own research and my own qualification in it, and I suppose you find out what works for you and what works for other people. But yeah, I've always had this sense of, and then I guess early on, you'll identify with this a little bit maybe. I do very little journalism now, but before running became such a serious part of my life, I was mostly a journalist. And the problem was, once a magazine has taken a story about you running 100 miles, they don't want a story about you running 50 miles, because that's not, there's not enough jeopardy. So you've got to keep going up and up. So that's part of the reason I was doing the Spine race. It's kind of my fifth ever race, fifth ever ultra race. And I pretty much did go, I think my first race was a 2-day 69 miles, and then it was like 100k, 100 miles, and I think I had a short B race that wasn't a magazine story, but then it was the Spine race, because I kept, I couldn't really afford all the race entries, to be honest. So I thought, if I can get a magazine press entry, so I was just jumping up and up, and then kind of, got a bit carried away. So I guess I've had both the age thing and the journalism thing, and I do think that almost propelled me up more quickly than it might have otherwise in the early days.
I do remember, now you mention it, and I believe it was in Outdoor Fitness. I remember your piece about your first ultra.
Really?
Yeah, I absolutely remember that, and I'm not going to get too carried away, but it does feel like more recently than it was. It wasn't even that long ago in the greater scheme of things. Your acceleration from that point has been quite meteoric.
I guess it looks like that from the outside. If I'm honest, so 4 years after my first ultra marathon, I think I was in the GB team. I think 4 years. Yeah. So I suppose that does seem kind of crazy. But yeah, I think it was going to experts, because I was already working with Shane and Renee McGregor then. It was that sense of, I think I was 40 when I got in the team, so I was like, you're not going to get many chances to get in the team. This is, you've got to put everything into it. And I would do things like, I suppose, for example, I don't drink when I'm training hard. I don't drink alcohol. I'll regularly go. Before the Pennine Way, I didn't drink for 4 months. So that pint at the finish line tasted quite good.
You must have been smashed halfway through.
I was. Yes, when I finished, I was like, right, bed. Yes, yeah, I could already tell it was. Yeah, I was a cheap. I was a cheap date that night.
Proper cheap day. 4 months training, 4 months dry. Just run for what 3 days, no sleep, and here you go. First thing he gets a pint. I don't know what Precision Hydration would be making of that. I'm not sure you were fully on point with your
I
electrolytes
think
there.
they're fine if you put an electrolyte in the pint. Yeah, I think that's yeah. Um, I've forgotten what I was saying, but yeah, I suppose all of that has hurried me up, I suppose, and but also huge passion for it. I mean, I suppose if you're going to sign up to run 100 miles, you've got to be quite bonkers / passionate, quite interested, but or even just 30 miles, to be honest. But yeah, I've just loved it all along. I've loved it. So I think above all else, it might be that I kind of felt like, oh, I found the thing I love. I found what suits me. Yeah, I think that overrides all of it. I think.
I think it would have to be because you can't play at doing what you're doing, let alone doing it at the level you're doing it at. There has to be certainly there are going to be dark moments, but there you must have a strong mental game already, which you've also further worked on, and that will get you through. But yeah, the meteoric rise, shall we say, seems to also couple with a sort of a blossoming, a blooming of your this whole. It's very much you coming out and driving this. It doesn't feel like some robotic athlete being made to do it. It's quite the opposite. It's an organic drive leading what's coming out the other end.
I suppose so. Yeah. I mean, I don't think I've done anything I didn't want to do. It's all been an obsession with, and I love that first year or two where you just don't know if you can complete the distances, especially when it comes to, say, something big like 100 miles, and you're on the start line going, I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if what's going to happen, what's ahead of me. And I'm really quite jealous of people who are on the start line of a 100 miler for the first time, or any big distance, because they're in for such an exciting journey. And now, starting out on the Pennine Way, for example, I wasn't that intimidated by the distance because I'd covered that distance before. I knew it would be awkward at times and so on, but I was intimidated by the record, which is a kind of different thing. But yeah, it's wonderful to just try and do something you're not sure if you can do it. I think that's and don't be afraid to fail, really. I think that's that's kind of when you're alive, isn't it? It's when you're living, without getting too hippie-ish, but yeah. Yeah.
No, I'm fully down with all of that. Now, while we're on the nuts and bolts of the run itself, I just made a note in big letters that said sleep, because clearly you didn't sleep a lot. You were not just looking to finish; you're chasing a time. You're chasing a very fast time. And how did you manage the sleep element? Did you time it? Did you schedule it? Was it simply as needed? Was it power naps? How was that managed? Because there must have been some sleep in there.
Yeah, that was the most difficult element. Knowing. Well, so I started off without. I had a schedule, but it didn't have any sleep stops scheduled in because I thought I'm not actually going to know now when I'm going to want to sleep. So I didn't have any sleep schedule, but I was open-minded and thought I will have to have some power naps. And I've had power naps before on FKTs, and they can be really effective. 10 or 15 minutes can really set you up for another couple of hours. So I went through the first day and the night without too much problem, although I was probably starting to, under fuel, which is almost inevitable. So I did try and have a sleep. I think in the middle of that second morning, I lay down for 15 minutes, had about 10 minutes. That seemed to revive me for a bit. But later that afternoon, I tried again because I was feeling a bit ropey again. And this time I couldn't actually sleep for whatever reason. So I just lay down for 15 minutes and thought, yeah, can't waste any more time. Off we go. But yeah, didn't feel all that much better. I remember telling someone I felt pretty goosed, whatever that really means. Yeah, how did geese come into it? Geese always seem quite lively and perky.
That's a very good point. Because when you say goosed, I think, well, obviously you must feel tired, but
maybe it's like, I don't know. Yeah.
Odd.
Anyway, I listened. Yeah, and towards the end of that second day, I had nearly 4 hours up on the record. So I was beginning to think I can't sleep because I can't throw away this valuable time. but I'm really glad I did. Sabrina Verge was out there, and she was very smart. She could tell I was a bit goosed, and she was asking me some questions, asking me about my sleep. And she said, actually, I think this is what I think you should do. I think you should have proper, 45 minutes, and then you've still got 3 hours in the bag comfortably. And at first I was like, yeah, but I'm giving up, 45 minutes. But actually, her argument was, otherwise you're just going to slow and slow and slow and slow, and you're going to start throwing, it's going to start throwing all your hard work away, all my team's hard work. But so I did do what she suggested, and it did seem to work. Although even in that second night, I was quite slow again. There were a few hours in the danger area is always between about 1 and 4 a.m., 5 a.m., where, your body is used to lying down. And again, I was quite sluggish for a bit. But when dawn came up, it revived me, and I kept trotting on.
Now that nap, on the power nap thing, I have come across the idea, and I remember trialing it ahead of my own UTMBs, thinking I might just need this at some point. Could I knock myself out for 20 minutes and get up again? And what someone had told me, which I found helpful, was you will feel like crap when you get up after your nap, but it will help you in the long term. So there's no way you were going to wake up feeling like, I've just had a great night's sleep. You'd probably feel worse than when you went to sleep. But the benefit was in the bank and would be felt later. Did that bear out in your experience, or was it different?
I think actually the 2 times I woke up, I actually felt a little bit revived initially. I think, but definitely that time I lay down and I didn't sleep. I didn't I didn't feel much better. Getting up again, I still felt a bit rubbish. But I mean, and even now there are slight frustrations with, I wasted 15 minutes there, or if I'd slept a bit earlier, maybe I would have been a bit quicker. But you never, something this long, you're just not going to do it perfectly. And I'm okay. I'm kind of letting go of those frustrations, because later on as well, I maybe got a bit complacent. It got a bit warm. I probably was underfueled, and I dropped. I lost half an hour on one leg, quite near the end actually, which meant for quite a rapid, rushed finish to try and secure that kind of 3-hour buffer again. So if I look back on it, there are quite a few moments where things weren't optimal. But I think you can obsess over that too much, and ultimately I've done it. I'm very happy. I would have taken that, as football managers always say. They would have taken that result before kickoff or whatever. I was happy with that overall.
I like that idea of letting go of those frustrations at the moment. The 15 minutes here or the 20, or that could have been like that, because I think you're absolutely right. Even in an organised event so long, when you're running an ultra, there are so many unknown variables. The success that you've come out of this with, and the fact that, that something may not have been perfect, but the overall was so good, you should be incredibly proud of that. And I understand, there must be bits of frustration. It would be easy to get hung up on. It's just our human psyche. Letting go of those and enjoying what's been done feels very strong and a lot more positive. I mean, the other bit that is I find quite amazing, outside of the technicalities and the performance and the preparation and everything else, you were picking up trail litter along the way. And I mean, again, at a slightly different end of the field in ultras, I've found sometimes it's a bit hard to remember to eat. And I'm someone who's been in nutrition for a decade. Do you know what I mean? I know I should be eating, but that effort, maybe reaching into the pack and getting it, as opposed to just taking another 20 steps, is a bit much. I love the idea of picking up trail litter, and I will do it on training runs or rides or whatever, because it just bugs me. You took it in, take it out. Simple as that. Shouldn't be there. Make it nicer. Do a little something to, someone said it's like storing trail karma. Every time you do that, you're putting a little bit of trail karma in the bank, and maybe that's just down to a route that you're not going to trip on in 5 miles' time, or whatever it may be. But in your case, you're running at a very pressured pace. There's a definite element of severe urgency going on at high performance. You're on a full effort. How did you incorporate the picking up of litter along the way? And I mean, how did that fit into it? And I'm assuming the team would have played a part in that as well.
Yes,
You don't want all
yeah.
that weight, big
I've
sack
got
over your shoulder.
I've got to definitely credit my pacers. I don't think I ever asked anyone to pick any up, but all of them were just totally on board with that. I never even said I was kind of briefing the team in advance, but I never said, could everyone else pick up litter, please, or anything. But they all instantly were picking up litter, which I thought was really wonderful. And really grateful to them for that. So it was actually rare, if I'm honest, that I was picking up litter, because there was nearly always a guy in front of me picking things up. But I did bend down a couple of times. Summit Fever Media made some videos of the whole thing, and yeah, there's a awkward thing near the end, quite in the last day, where I bend down to pick one up, and I'm not too sprightly. I do look like I'm 85. But yeah, we picked up I think around eight medium-sized bags. I wish I'd measured it properly. Biodegradable bags of rubbish on the way. Mostly plastic bottles and food wrappers. But yeah, so and it was mostly nearer the towns or villages, and so sometimes my crew, in the road crew, would pick it up and chuck it in the van. So that was I don't know, just a kind of fun thing to do in a way, and just almost a logical thing to do. And in a way, I was quite pleased with how little rubbish there was up on the hills. Actually, that was quite pleasing, because obviously we've probably all seen on social media these kind of post-lockdown horror scenes of tents and burnt out cars or whatever. I was a bit worried there might be a sofa or a tent or a crashed helicopter or something that I might have to collect. That would have got a bit awkward, so I was a bit nervous about that.
There's a moral quandary for you. I know I'm picking up litter, but it's too heavy. The burnt out sofa is probably a step too far, even for your crew.
Yes, so I'm glad it didn't get that much of a dilemma. But yeah, thank you again to my crew for all your help with that. Because it's not always fun picking up litter. But there were no kind of nappies or anything, thankfully, or the really awful stuff. So it was mostly the stuff you'd expect, thankfully.
Well, that's good, and I think a nice way to, just leave things. It's easy to ignore, but even if you picked one bit of litter up every training run or whatever, that's one bit that's not there later. It can feel like you're not doing anything, but the compound benefit of simply leaving it that 0.1% better than it was before you arrived, I think that's a nice thing, and you would have done something far more significant given the distance and the amount of stuff collected. Which also plays in to we're coming back to the 1932 trespass, about which I am now an expert, and will pretend to be, having learned from you. Thank you very much. And that key era of civil disobedience, and the activist side of your running, and you as a runner, in terms of highlighting elements around climate change, raising money for Greenpeace, using this run as a force for good, and frankly, showing off while doing it, because not just going carbon neutral, that's for pussies clearly, going carbon negative on the whole thing. So can you just tell me a bit more about this, the positive activist side of what you're able to do? Because this run has gained a lot of attention. You've been on the BBC and everywhere else. It's gained a lot. You're using it for a lot of good.
Well, thank you. I suppose, I feel I've been recently, like any, I think, trail runner or outdoorsy person, you kind of instinctively care about these kind of places and worry a bit about the climate change news that we're almost not seeing anymore, because we see it so regularly. We get kind of almost climate news fatigue. But I do feel kind of, if I'm honest, kind of radicalized by the Extinction Rebellion protests last year, and I sort of started going along to join in those and join in the meetings locally. And I suppose they gave me hope and a sense of purpose, and I've got kids. I'm worried about what sort of planet we're passing on to them, if I'm honest, and to their grandchildren. And I felt a bit powerless, and sort of, what can I do? So I was looking. There are lots of angles you can go with this. I mean, I do think the personal stuff isn't nearly as effective as ultimately the political stuff. If we can make governments change policies and bring in rules, that's going to be far more effective than whether we're recycling or plastic bottles or not. But still, there's the personal element. And I was lucky to find a company called Our Carbon, who can they're almost carbon accountants. So they audited me. I was just intrigued by my own footprint. So they looked at my carbon and equivalent greenhouse gas emissions for last year, and we sort of calculated them as best as we could, and then we came up with like a budget for this year, which would be a great reduction. And my whole plan actually is on their website. It's ourcarbon.com, and my whole sort of budget is on there because they used me as a bit of a guinea pig. And what was great was that obviously there's a little bit of offsetting for now. So I paid a small amount of money to Jim Mann, who's a record-breaking fell runner. Well, not to him, but to one of his companies, his Future Forest company, who do lots of tree planting in mostly in Scotland. And they also run the Trees Not Teas initiative, which is really taking off lately with race events where you could, instead of getting a t-shirt, because most of us have so many t-shirts from races that we're possibly not using, and if it's polyester and stuff, it takes hundreds of years to degrade. You can just plant a tree instead, which is brilliant. So I offset with him a small amount. I know offsetting's not perfect, but for the moment, I think it's the best we've got. But that made me, and some lifestyle changes. That made my whole family carbon negative for the year. So that was just kind of a fun thing to do, to work out which things have the most impact, and how many things, what can we change easily and stuff. But I don't want to be too on my sort of high horse about it, because it's I can appreciate some of that. So it gets annoying for other people, and nothing's perfect. Like, for example, when I did this run, I did encourage more car journeys that wouldn't have happened otherwise. So almost all my support crew turned up in cars, partly because they're meeting me at 3:00 in the morning and stuff. But you hope that's going to be improved over time. I don't know how far you want to get into it, but if electrical vehicles and so on were subsidised, or public transport was better and subsidised and so on, there are lots of areas we can go into. But climate change is just a vast area. But I suppose it was. Well, also some of that was selfish on my part, in that gave me big motivating factors. So it was kind of back to the psychologist who I was working with. She was saying, "Why are you doing it?" And of course, if I can attach some sort of message or something powerful to me, something meaningful, and that became the climate stuff. So when it was, when really I just wanted to lie down and cry for a bit, I would remember that I was doing it for a few different reasons, but one of them was the climate stuff, and therefore I had a strong purpose. So it was all quite selfish, really, and quite just to get me to the end as quickly as possible.
Well, I think if you're going to be selfish, that's a pretty good way to do it, because you could have used motivation as personal glory or whatever it may be, and not that that's a wrong motivation to take at times, but to dig deeper in the dark moments, thinking, well, this is saving the planet. I think it comes back to the picking up the single piece of litter on the trail. What difference does one piece of litter make? Well, if everyone does it, makes a huge difference. What difference does one Pennine Way run, one small fundraising for Greenpeace, what does it really matter? This, that, the other. If you look at that, you can say, well, why would I do it? You compound all of those. You personally took a huge step forward in that direction and made the whole thing, in terms of the planetary impact, better than it was afterwards, as in better than it was before when you finished. I think that's brilliant.
Thanks. And I must credit you guys as well for, I was looking around for the companies that, had vegan products with, properly recyclable or biodegradable packaging, and you guys do very well there. So thank you for your help. And I suppose while I'm clunkily plugging things, I'll get in trouble if I don't mention my main sponsor, Innovate. These guys, they do have a fantastic new shoe out, but this is where I'm in a contradictory position. But they have an amazing new shoe that I wore called the Terra Ultra G270, which was really, really good. It's meant for harder trails, actually, but even in the Pennines, in really rough, rugged terrain, it was fantastic. I didn't have any real foot issues. But that's where I'm in a what's the word? Yeah, contradictory position, because obviously overconsumption is what a lot of us are doing in the Western world, and maybe buying things we don't need, chucking them out before they're used properly. And so I'm promoting a shoe and promoting consumption when we've probably all got enough shoes, like we've got enough t-shirts for now. So I guess I would say I used a fantastic shoe. Innovate, have a new shoe, but do you really need a new shoe right now? Why not? But if you do, this is a good shoe. But and in fact, my good friend Dan Lawson, GB ultra runner, is just this morning started off running Land's End. Which way? No, sorry, John O'Groats to Land's End. He's going to try and break the male record. And instead of fundraising for this, he's asked people not to shop while he's running for these. I think it's going to be up to 8 days. So he's asked people, or was it 10 days? But yeah, his thing is, I would love it if you didn't do any shopping. I think he means food shopping's all right, but why not shop for the 10 days while I'm running? Which I thought was a really great idea of just maybe just reminding ourselves how much do we really need to sort of buy and spend. But yeah, we've got ourselves in a bit of a pickle in a way, in that we're creating so much waste, not just the food waste, but yeah, massive subject. And I don't want to get too annoying and boring.
No. It's a huge one, and I feel the quandary, because on the one hand, similarly, love the environment, want and need to do something for climate change, and okay, so having, for example, like our gel, well, on the one hand you have to hydrate it, therefore we're not shipping the water weight, so there's a win. The packaging is recyclable. It is virtually all of our stuff is plant-based, so we're not involved in industrial dairy or animal agriculture, which is a large polluter as well. There's a lot of positives, but then you come to the kit side of getting out into these wild environments and these natural environments that we love, and not all of the materials that we're using are particularly planetarily friendly, should that be a word. But on the other hand, you do need some decent kit, and I will give you a little assistance with the Innovate plug, because since not getting free shoes anymore as a journalist, having not done that for many years, I've had to buy shoes. The only ones I buy are actually Innovate. I believe that is actually true. I think so. But they last for bloody ever. I mean, I don't like advice that says you need to change your running shoes every 300 miles. That to me is probably sponsored by the running shoe industry lobby, a bit like the you need 3 grams of protein per kilo. New study says you need 3 grams of protein per kilo of body weight, not 2 if you're looking to gain muscle. Well, there may be a little outside influence in increasing that number as well. Chucking away perfectly good shoes. I don't know about you, mate, but I still have, and still running. I mean, I've got Innovates that are 6, 7, 8 years old. Buy something good, but use it. I mean, as long as you don't feel a problem and you feel there's still performance, no need to trash them. So I do buy them, but very, very sparingly, and they seem to last forever, even when I think they're at a point where a lot of people would chuck them out. They haven't got holes in them. They may not quite have as much grip. That's one issue. Grip does wear off in time. But, I mean, where are you at on the shoe thing? Clearly, getting a supply of shoes is not a problem, but you're mindful about this. Do you feel a need to regularly change a shoe for anything other than outright grip?
No, and I've had shoes last year, many years, and way beyond the sort of three. Is it 3? What is the guidance? 300 miles or so. I've had many shoes last well beyond that, and had no injuries or anything. And if you don't mind another clumsy plug, Innovate now use graphene in their rubber on most of their shoes now, and that's that lasts longer. So they are. They're hoping those shoes last longer, which in a way is counterproductive, because you're not going to buy a new shoe for them as soon as you might have otherwise. Although actually, you're going to get better value for money, hopefully. But yeah, I guess I'm in a very fortunate position. I do get more shoes than I need from Innovate. What I do quite a lot is I've got 2 or 3 good running friends who are very happy to have pairs that luckily they have similar size feet. Big ugly feet is the official size there, I think. I was talking more about mine than my friends, but they're very happy to have sort of used but still very usable shoes. So I try very hard to keep things in use, I suppose, and pass them around. But yeah, it's the overconsumption is it's hard because all these companies are saying, hey, here's a new watch, it's slightly better than the old watch. Do we actually need a new watch? And it's hard, and I fall for that stuff too. I'm definitely not going to be on my high horse about this sort of stuff. It's hard because we're being bombarded with ideas, and then we see other runners using the new one, and it looks great, and it is hard. But I suppose, yeah, if we could buy a little bit less, and if we can repair a few things, and so on, or pass them around. And like a while ago, I went through having a bit of a clear out, and I just realised I had so much running kit I wasn't using. So I made a real effort to pass it on to places that may use it. And again, Dan Lawson has this wonderful company, Rerun Clothing, charity rather, I think. I can't remember their exact status, but yeah, and he redistributes lots of running kit. Although I think they get this year's been terrible because of all these race cancellations. So places, the large marathons, they've ordered their T-shirts, and then the race never happened. So there's all these race T-shirts going around the world. So I would, Dan's idea is that hopefully when you do a race now, at the end, maybe even the medal as well, especially if it's a race you've done or a distance that you've done a few times, do you really need that T-shirt and medal? Why not politely tell the race organizer maybe before or even after the race and say, actually, I'd rather not take a T-shirt. I don't need a T-shirt or even a medal. That's kind of his idea and his initiative, and one I fully support.
I think that's one that definitely needs changing. It was an idea that seemed good at the time. You do your race, you get your T-shirt, you're very proud of your T-shirt and your medal, but it feels very dated now. T-shirts and medals, and that's, often it's not a colour you would have chosen, it's not a size you would have chosen, it's not a shape you would have chosen. So after the initial glow's worn off, you never wear it again. So where do you strike a balance with that? I think the trees, not tees, or there's got to be so much more that can be done. We really don't need another T-shirt. It's nice to see more races started to give the option of do you want it or not. But I'd like to see a time where we progress towards it's not there. And I know so many races are trying to do this, trying to reduce their footprint or trying to reduce their impact on the landscape. You were talking about your support crew getting around. Well, UTMB, I think, is a great example of, so they're still using combustion engines for transport, but the transport system that is set up to help supporters and crew get around the valley for the race is very, very good. And they're doing everything they can to encourage people not to go driving around, not least because it would cause the most hellish traffic jams. But yeah, so much more that can be done there. And I think the more people that are conscious of it, the better, and the more people that start to email their race organisers and say, I don't want a T-shirt. Because also, even though you said you don't want a T-shirt, if the race has the T-shirts, well, your T-shirt still exists, you just don't have it. Better than it didn't exist in the first place.
Yeah, hopefully the following year they go, oh, hold on, well, we only needed 30 T-shirts, not 300. And I fully defend people's right to, if it's a huge race for you that you've not done that distance, I think people should still have the option, because we were all there once, weren't we, when we hadn't done a half marathon, we hadn't done a marathon, and actually to have that first T-shirt is quite a cool thing. And I wouldn't want to deny everyone that, but it is straightforward now to just, when you sign up for a race, if you've linked up with Trees Not Tees, you can just go actually have a tree instead of a tee, and so that's some progress. Obviously there are various areas to work in, but I actually feel really encouraged by the running community and the sort of things I'm hearing and seeing overall.
Well, maybe we can take a lead from Ironman Triathlon's book and ultimately phase out the T-shirts in favour of a branded tattoo. What do you reckon?
Branded tattoo, yes.
I'm just going to get the race tattooed on my leg or arm or whatever it may be.
Have you got one?
No. Okay. No ink. I've had occasional midlife crisis moments thinking that would be a good idea. But I'm aware from stepping into a tattoo parlour 20 years ago when I was young enough for it to be quite acceptably stupid, and sort of getting this half-assed design from some bloke and just thinking, I just don't know that I want that forever. No, I've never been able to take the plunge, and I do understand people who I think an Ironman, similar to a UTMB or a marathon, it can be such a long journey. People feel so passionate about it that that's a nice way for them to be able to express it. But it's maybe a little more planetary friendly than the t-shirt. But no, I'm not. I'm not following the idea of inking my races onto my body just yet. Have you got any?
No.
No. I think when David Dimbleby got one, I figured that was the end of tattoos, really.
I didn't know that, but yeah. Yeah, it almost seems more radical not to have them now. If you look at Premier League footballers, maybe a bit of clean skin is radical almost. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're coming out the other side, having not rebelled in that direction. We're actually able to rebel by not having done it, which is good. Back to the running though, away from the ink, running fast away from the tattoo parlours. We're going to run into the subject of training partners because. I think training partners are a great element that can help anyone improve and hold them accountable, whether it's simply turning up to your session or having a friendly rivalry. But you really seem to have taken this a step further with your new best mate, John Kelly, who set the FKT on the Pennine Way, eight days ahead of yours. And then you went and heartlessly ripped it from his grasp, not even 8 days later. But it seems that comments of his I've read, things I've seen of yours, that rivalry didn't just hold you accountable to doing it, it pushed you both to do more than you would perhaps have done otherwise. Can you tell me a little bit about that story?
Yeah, I'm trying to think when me and John first started talking. I think it was on Twitter. He was moving to Britain, or he knew he would be soon, and I either answered a question of his or he dropped me a line saying he was moving to Britain. He wanted to know, I suppose, in the Bristol area, what sort of trails there were, what sort of training opportunities. And I remember telling him about the Brecon Beacons and how I'd happily take him out there sometime when he moved over. And then he moved over here just over a year ago. The first time I met him in person, actually, he was doing his Grand Round idea. And I was pacing him I did 3 legs of the Paddy Buckley. This was in May last year in terrible weather, actually, really, really quite rough. And yeah, I like to think we're good friends. Our families have met up once. Our sons are the same age. And of course, I knew of him because obviously he's finished Barkley marathons, which not many people can say they've done.
So literally that's got to be the most exclusive running club in the world. Barkley marathons finishes.
Might even only be 13 people if I'm. Yeah, there aren't many. And so yeah, I was obviously intrigued by a character like that. We haven't been for as many training runs as we would have liked, partly lockdown and family and so on. But we did go on a nice run together in the Brecon Beacons in March, when actually lockdown was just starting to get really serious, and we were just starting to realise that we may not be able to do the races we wanted, which is quite, I suppose, quite a big deal for us for both. And he had already told me he was going to have a go at the Pennine Way FKT. Now, I had, the previous year when I started working with David Roach, I had said to him, this is one of the things I want to do next year, a group of sort of 4 or 5 things. And he had actually talked me out of it a little bit, but I didn't need talking out of it because I was intimidated by it. And if there was a good reason not to do it, I was like, yeah, fine. But then when I realized races weren't going to be happening, I did say to John on that day, well, if UTMB gets cancelled, I hope you don't mind, I might try the Pennine Way as well. I mean, I don't know what would have happened if he had said, yeah, I do mind. Because obviously you can't really object to anyone else having a go. That's the beauty of FKTs. You can have a go whenever you like. But it was still, he had said first, I suppose, that he was going to have a go this year. But then actually he sent me a message. He was very, very generous, and he said we could do it together. Now I actually started to think that in some ways would be lovely, in some ways wouldn't ever work out well for both of us, in that you inevitably will have times where one of you feels better and one of you feels worse. And my suggestion was actually to start at opposite ends at the same time, because I wanted to go south anyway. He wanted to go north, so that wouldn't have worked. But and to see if we go at the same time, and that would have been quite exciting online anyway. I must admit I wavered a bit. Sometimes I thought that was a good idea, sometimes I didn't. And actually we just couldn't get the same dates anyway. Like, I was quite adamant. He he wanted to do it sooner rather than later, and I had a bit more time, and also I wanted to make sure my main two sort of crew people, they could only do certain dates, and I was more concerned with being able to do it the best I could. That was my priority, so I ended up going a week after him. But I do feel really bad that he basically broke a record that stood for 31 years, and he only got to enjoy that feeling for 8 days, which is pretty unlikely and pretty cruel, actually. But I must say, I'm a big fan of John. I'm one of his biggest fans, and in a couple of weeks, he's going to try his Grand Round again, which is so his Pennine Way run was only half of what he's trying to do. He's going to do running the Paddy Buckley Round, the Bob Graham Round, and the Charlie Ramsey Round consecutively, while cycling between them all, which has never been done before. And he tried this last year and got actually pretty close in some terrible weather. He's changed one or two things, but in a few weeks, and I hope to be out helping him on that as well. So he's a hugely impressive athlete. It'll be interesting to see how that goes. Although I'm very confident he can.
That's a hell of a personal challenge. Any one of those on their own is more than a match for most people. Let alone all three together, and I'm going to cycle between them.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy, isn't it? So that's what I mean. And I've done the Pennine Way, and I'm sitting here with my British smugness, feeling like I'm done for the year. I've done my bit, and that was only half. He's doing it I think it's just about within a month. I think it'll just be which is if he does that, it's unprecedented, really.
That's amazing. Quite a way to run yourself into form by quickly setting a Pennine Way record across a cool 260 plus miles. Giving yourself a few weeks to just let that training load sink in, and then taper into your next one. Interesting to see the things that are coming out of this lockdown non-racing period. Now, understandably, we talked about it earlier, there's been interest and there have been more FKTs going on, more people setting out doing personal challenges, whether it is a serious headliner like yours or it could be a personal one. Want to run 10 laps of Richmond Park, or going to run for 12 hours in this place. Or a friend recently ran 100 miles around Richmond Park.
Wow.
And I was knocked out because he lives right next to it. Like every single lap, he's like, I could be in bed. I could be in bed. I could be in bed. And wow, what drove you to keep going there?
That's really impressive. Yeah,
it was really literally running past his house every hour and 10 minutes or whatever it was.
Wow.
But if people wanted to put together their own personal challenge, whether they want to go huge like you, or whether it's whatever it wants to be, do you have any sort of core bits of advice about how to prepare and execute?
I think you can kind of attack it from both ends. You can do the kind of get out your map, look locally, look for an interesting trail, look for something you haven't noticed before. Maybe some of my coaching clients were doing this actually, and finding a nice 20-mile sort of section of trail nearby that they realized they could turn into an FKT, or even at least a Strava segment. It is part of the same thing, really. So there's the sort of look local and do something fun and maybe smaller. The other end of it is the sort of go out big and go. There's an American website called fastestknowntime.com where you can look up all the ones that have been registered, and there are thousands now. It's kind of a global website, but there's plenty of British things on there. And you could look at something maybe that's achievable for you, or even spot something that's not on there and think, okay, well I could go and set a fastest known time, and I love that you can come up with your own round or your own bit of trail. So you can kind of hit it from both ends, or there's no reason why you couldn't do both those things. And I am a big fan of kind of like sign up for things that scare you. Like I was definitely scared of this Pennine Way run because it was such a good record, and it would have been quite a public belly flop if I hadn't done well, because I had people videoing me and whatnot. But it's a brilliant side to the sport. I would almost say, so Beth Pascal, a good friend of mine, she just ran the best women's time on the Bob Graham just 2 weeks ago, and she has said in an interview that mattered more to her than any race result. So I think there is an element of this is almost more enjoyable than racing. It'll be interesting to see next year with when we assume races will be back on, how many people. It'd be interesting to see if we all go back to normal, just racing all the time, or if people are more into these sort of DIY challenges, which I just think are fantastic fun. And they're more about adventure as well, because you can select one that suits you. You can select when. You can select your own style. You could be supported, self-supported, unsupported. It's brilliant. It's brilliant fun. I love it.
I know it is a great explosion to see, and it feels like something that 10, 15 years ago, in journalism, in the sports and performance and active space, we were sort of trying to get a handle on, with some features of, how do you get fit in a city, or how do you train for an ultra if you don't live in a mountain, and this idea of you could go out and use your environment. It's not new, but it just feels like it's come into so much more of an expression through this real public explosion of FKTs. I'm sure they're not a totally new invention, but lockdown has really shone a spotlight on them. The one I actually forgot to mention earlier is our very own content manager, James. He set himself a personal challenge. This is a good one for anyone who's into cycling. He cycled the border of... I'm going to get the county wrong. What county are you in down there? Are you in Wiltshire?
I'm in Wiltshire, yeah, and I think he lives quite nearby.
He does, right? Okay, so Wiltshire, I think he'd already cycled, but Wiltshire borders another county if you go to the south.
Oh, so south would be Dorset.
I think it was Somerset. I'm absolutely murdering this and showing a horrible lack of national geography. However, picking a route around the border of your own county on your bike. I mean, I think he was out for 340 miles or something doing that.
Wow.
But very accessible. Go and do it yourself any old time, and we're going to do a podcast about it, looking into that. Just go and find your own adventure. And this lockdown FKT kind of combination seems to be really opening that mindset, and your run's been a big part of publicising it.
Yeah, I think it's it's just a brilliant time for all that, because we're not distracted by races. I guess there's a hint that some races might be back on in the autumn, but I've already found with my coaching clients that some of them would rather go and do an FKT now, and it just seems like a great time for it, and I don't know, they're just great fun on lots of levels, and also you can make them more social in a way, because you can invite your mates. They might not be willing to go and do a 100-mile race, and even if they do, you'll probably lose the chance of actually running it all with them. But if you're doing a Paddy Buckley Round, you can get your mates involved, and they can be coming out and supporting you. So it can be really rewarding on lots of levels. So I would I'd encourage anyone to look into something that might suit them. I mean, it doesn't have to be a fastest or best. It could just be a DIY adventure. I mean, another great website is the National Trails website, actually, which has the details of, we have 15 national trails in England and Wales. Some people may know these well, some people may not. I don't know, but the North Downs Way, South Downs Way, South West Coast Path, Cotswold Way. One of my clients is going to run the Cotswold Way in a few weeks. She's not aiming for a record, but she's never run 100 miles, and that's what she wants to do. Without the kind of, in a way, without the pressure of a race, and she just wants to do it on her own. But she's got in friends, and I hope to help her. And I just think that's wonderful. She's pushing the envelope, so to speak, and testing herself, but all on her own terms. It's it's a great time. Good time to be alive.
It is, and let's wrap this one up with one last wild card, which is we've dealt with top tips, best advice for achieving these sorts of things, planning them, setting them out. Worst advice you've ever come across for an FKT? Any real howlers?
Oh, well, I'd say, it may look a bit like I'm not a big fan of go out hard and hang on. It may look a bit like I tried to do that, but it wasn't on the Pennine Way, but it wasn't my intention. I think the weather is. I think you shouldn't be too shy about postponing if the weather does look rubbish, because if it's hammering it down for a day or two and strong winds, like, everyone's going to be miserable. The navigation's going to be much harder. I don't think you should be too sheepish about postponing and coming back another day where it's just more fun for everyone. What else? I suppose I'm no real fan of the the kind of don't eat carbohydrates idea. I guess that's not necessarily a just to do with FKTs, but yeah, you definitely need some carbohydrates, or you will be less healthy and less strong and fast a runner. What else? That's probably about it for now. I think I'll get back to you on that one. That's quite a good one. I'll get back to you.
No, that's a good little set to get us going, and there are many avenues. I mean, that whole overall endocrine, hormonal health, balancing hard endurance work against correct calories and carbohydrate for the work, etc., long-term health. That's a minefield, which could be a whole other podcast on its own. And if anyone's interested in looking at those things, well, funnily enough, you might want to look into the podcast we did on relative energy deficiency syndrome with none other than Renee McGregor. We also did some great stuff on the downsides of intermittent fasting with her as well, because whereas I see, I think there's great benefits to be had in a bit of intermittent fasting. There's also it's the pitching off point for eating disorders and hormonal disaster if you're either on a borderline or mentally inclined that way. So needs treating with care, not the outright panacea everyone may see it as. So tons more there, but I think what I would really like to say now is congratulations, hell of a run, as ever. I'm in awe, and as ever, I'm very happy you set a marker that reminds me that it's not impossible, and we have many years left to go, which I like to surround myself with as many people as possible who do that sort of thing, because it can be easy sometimes, particularly in lockdown. News is negative. Let's try and avoid that as much as possible. But you can lose sight of where your real goals and perspectives lie. We're not quite interacting as much with each other as we are. So thank you for your inspiration and fuel to the fire today. And congratulations on your run.
Well, you're incredibly kind, Warren, and thank you for all of that. Thanks for having me on, and thanks for your great products that helped a great deal. So, and keep up. I really admire what you guys are doing, and keep it up. Thank you.
We will do just that.
I don't doubt it.
So there you have it, folks. Damian Hall. I hope you enjoyed that one. Let us know what you thought. Do send us an email. Get in touch with us on social. You'll find all of the links to our store, our social, and everything else in the show notes below. All that's left to say from me is thank you very much for joining us. Thank you, Damian, for a great show. And all of you, whatever you do now, don't do anything before you've been to 33fuel.com and got yourself some incredible natural sports nutrition. We'll see you next time. Thank you.